Chapter 7 of Neil Postman's Amusing Ourselves to Death, entitled Now This, considers the reality and consequences of living in an information environment that has become completely disjointed and discontinuous. Here's a quote from Postman. "We have become so accustomed to its discontinuities that we are no longer struck dumb, as any sane person would be, by a newscaster who, having just reported that a nuclear war is inevitable, goes on to say that he will be right back after this word from Burger King, who says, in other words, now this. One can hardly overestimate the damage that such juxtapositions do to our sense of the world as a serious place. The damage is especially massive to youthful viewers who depend so much on television for their clues as to how to respond to the world. In watching television news, they, more than any other segment of the audience, are drawn into an epistemology based on the assumption that all reports of cruelty and death are greatly exaggerated and, in any case, not to be taken seriously or responded to sanely. I should go so far as to say that embedded in the surrealistic frame of a television news show is a theory of anti-communication, featuring a type of discourse that abandons logic, reason, sequence, and rules of contradiction. In aesthetics, I believe the name given to this theory is Dadaism. In philosophy, nihilism. In psychiatry, schizophrenia. In the parlance of the theater, it is known as vaudeville. It's from pages 104 and 105. The question that Postman asks us to reflect on is, what effect does the disjointed and discontinuous nature of information that we learn from television, and especially from TikTok and social media more generally, have on the way we think, structure, and live our lives? Attempts to answer this question are necessarily undermined by the fact that this is the world that we live in. It's the world that surrounds us. The only way one can hope to find out what kind of effect this is having on us is to intentionally go on a technology detox and to see what it is like to live outside of this ecosystem for a while. Short of completely extracting ourselves from the modern world, this is probably the best we can do. That said, unfortunately, even this will not give us a real sense of what it would be like to live outside this information ecosystem, as we have all been shaped by this ecosystem from our earliest days. But again, this is probably the best we can do. At the end of this installment, we will look briefly at what a technology detox might look like. Here's another quote from Postman. "My point is that we are by now so thoroughly adjusted to the now this world of news, a world of fragments, where events stand alone, stripped of any connection to the past, or to the future, or to other events, that all assumptions of coherence have vanished, and so perforce has contradiction. In the context of no context, so to speak, it simply disappears. And in its absence, what possible interest could there be in a list of what the president says now and what he said then?" So we begin our journey, as it turns out, very, very deep down the rabbit hole. We were all raised in a disjointed media environment where the idea of truth has been massively undermined by the nature of visual culture. Without some sense of objectivity, all that we are left with is how we feel about our particular news item. And feelings, of course, are going to be largely determined by the environment and culture in which we were raised. The resulting cultural organization, almost necessarily, will develop along increasingly tribal lines, along with an increasing distrust of those who feel differently about any given topic. Here's another quote from Postman. Stated in its simplest form, it is that television provides a new or possibly restores an old definition of truth. The credibility of the teller is the ultimate test of the truth of a proposition. Credibility here does not refer to the past record of the teller for making statements that have survived the rigors of reality testing. It refers only to the impression of sincerity, authenticity, vulnerability, or attractiveness, choose one or more, conveyed by the actor/reporter. And that is from page 102, 101 and 102. And actor-reporter, you could also put politician, certainly, in that list. Our problem is, it's not only that we have lost the objectivity of the typographic age, it's also that this problem is greatly magnified by our heightened individualism and the consequent breakdown of our communities, as well as by the invention of mass communication, which makes the cult of personality not only a possibility, but nearly an inevitability. And in our culture, if the credibility of the teller was only a reflection of their impression of sincerity, if they were dishonest, their subterfuge could only go so far. Yes, it would be unfortunate for the small number of people they had managed to fool, but it would not result in cultural collapse. The invention of mass media has changed this, however. This is, of course, Postman's concern. When society's criteria for judging the honesty of a politician is based on how society feels about them, it is easy to see how mass manipulation and tyranny are not far away. So getting back to the idea of the technology detox, as mentioned above, for each of us, this is probably the only possible way out of the dilemma, to try to extract ourselves somewhat from the technology trap. So I'm just going to discuss here in broad outlines some aspects that you might, if you're interested, want to incorporate into a technology detox. These are all on, as always, these texts are all on my Substack. There's a link to that below the video. So if you don't get them all down as I go through them, they are available there. So to begin, starting out by clarifying the goals of one's technology detox is a good place to start. It helps to judge the efficacy of the undertaking after the fact. So I encourage journaling. Generally, I think it's a really good practice. So you could journal about where you started and then what the effect was as you went through it, and especially afterwards. Everyone has their own specific struggles. So before you begin, write down what exactly you're hoping to get from your detox. Here are some obvious possibilities. Perhaps you're looking to reduce stress and anxiety. Perhaps you have an issue with sleep and focus, and you want that to be improved. Perhaps you want to spend more meaningful time with people and in nature. Certainly there are other possibilities, issues that you have that are technology related, so you can write them down. As far as practices go, again, different people have different needs and inclinations. The following are just some of the practices that could be a part of your detox. You could track screen time on your phone, on your laptop, desktop, computer, television, etc. Journal. You could journal, again, when, what, and why you're using them. And then you could create healthy boundaries and habits. There's a variety of ways that one can do this. You could limit screen time, especially giving yourself 1 to 2 hours before you go to sleep and then after waking with no screens. You could replace this with a morning walk, stretching, prayer and reflection, journaling, reading, and so on. And then over time, you might stretch that time out beyond the 1 to 2 hours. Another good practice is to to have a rule that you do not use phones during meal times, and especially when you're with other people. Turning the phone to grayscale can help to make it less addictive. Colors are very powerful, and social media companies know that. Something else you could do is to commit to reading the news only once a week. To this end, some people order the Sunday paper, which provides them with a weekly analog ritual to look forward to, and limits one's information diet to a set number of pages. It's also the kind of thing that you can read on Sundays and maybe slowly through the week get through it, because they tend to be pretty big. But having something in the physical world is a good thing, obviously, and then also just like limiting the amount of news. So cutting out news sources online. And of course, when consuming any information, you should ask yourself, is this something that I can immediately use, or is it simply another trivial piece of information? For most of us, I think news consumption, if we're honest, is an entertainment, a source of entertainment rather than integral to our daily lives. And so at least we should be honest about that. Obviously, if one works in a job that requires keeping up with the news, that's a different situation. But for most of us, that is not the case. Decluttering, especially one's digital world, and especially one's phone. You can turn off all non-essential notifications, and uninstall as many distracting apps as possible, or move them to a hidden folder. And then there's some new practices that you can engage in that will take the place of the things that you're cutting out. Again, a morning and evening walk is a wonderful ritual, especially if you can do it with someone else. Stretching and exercise, prayer and reflection. Again, journaling. I encourage everyone to do this, if only during the detox period, as it gives you an opportunity to reflect on what kind of changes you're experiencing. Hiding and turning off the phone when possible, even throughout the day. And then maybe more specific intentional digital fasts. So maybe no technology for a day, or if that's not possible, for the entire morning or an evening. Certainly trying to do things more intentionally that are in the physical world. Hobbies such as music and art, especially hobbies that include other people as a way to connect with other people. And then other types of analog rituals, such as reading physical books, writing with pen and paper, maybe writing letters and sending them. That is something that is very unusual, and definitely people appreciate. It makes quite an impression. And then maybe also throughout one's day, finding ways to incorporate meaningful rituals, taking time to make tea and coffee slowly, intentionally, things like that. And finally, building community, finding others who share your concerns and desires to detox, who share concerns about technology. It's very helpful, surrounding yourself by people that recognize the problem, because a lot of people don't. And then, again, cultivating intentional conversations and connections. And then as far as how to go about it, there are a variety of ways. Two possible ways one might go about technology detox. Maybe the easiest way is to go cold turkey. And in particular, if you can plan an intentional tech-free vacation with friends or family who, again, maybe share your concerns and are willing to go along with the same practice. You can incorporate any of the above ideas again into that week or whatever it is, whatever period you can be off the grid. But essentially just commit to simply going tech-free during your break. And again, if this is not possible, the next best thing is to come up with something like a 7-day detox plan, for example, that incorporates the practices we've just discussed. And certainly they're not mutually exclusive. You can certainly do both. Whatever your technology detox might look like, there can be no question that such intentional interventions on our part are necessary in the world that we live in, which is technology saturated and surrounded by people who mostly do not live with boundaries when it comes to technology. So the default for them is just to accept technology and not have boundaries. And unless we're intentional, we will be tempted to do the same. Ultimately, the goal of a technology and information detox is to get back to something resembling a normal approach to the world, so as to be in a better place to evaluate the influence that technology and information glut has over our lives. As Postman realized 40 years ago, we have been losing our capacity for clear thinking and evaluation for a very long time. Here's one last quote from Postman. And in saying that the television news show entertains but does not inform, I'm saying something far more serious than that we are being deprived of authentic information. I'm saying we are losing our sense of what it means to be well informed. Ignorance is always correctable, but what shall we do if we take ignorance to be knowledge? That's from pages 107 and 108. So thank you, as always, for joining us for this look at Chapter 7 of Neil Postman's Amusing Ourselves to Death. We will look at Chapter 8 next week. As always, please subscribe to this channel. Share with a friend who you might think will find it of interest. And download, if you have not already done so, the How Did We Get Here reading list at the link below. Thanks again. Have a great week end, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.